Hey listeners, we're super excited to share a brand new way for you to connect with the Legally Speaking podcast. Introducing Fan Mail. Got questions about a recent episode, thoughts on legal careers, or just want to share some super positive feedback with us? Simply click the send us a text link in the show notes and your message will come straight to us. We can't wait to hear from our amazing legal community. Thank you so much for all your support from all of us here at the team. We really appreciate it.
I think AI is a really good teaching tool. It's very real. It may not be all the way there yet everywhere. I think there's a lot of improvement to be made, but you always got to think about this trajectory and skate where the puck is going. That's one of our other values at Spellbook. You got to think about where the puck is going. Our team, we're only one company in this space, so we are seeing huge uptake of Spellbook in law schools today. We've had over 90 or 100 professors sign up to bring Spellbook to their classes. There's actually two parts to our mission statement. It's make legal services accessible by helping lawyers get rid of the drudgery in their day-to-day.
On today's Legally Speaking podcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Scott Stevenson. Scott is the co-founder and CEO at Spellbook, the first generative AI co-pilot for lawyers. Described like GitHub Copilot for lawyers, Spellbook is dedicated to making legal services more affordable and accessible. Scott has been building technology for over 15 years. So, a very warm welcome to the show, Scott.
Thanks for having me, Rob. Great to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. Been a big fan of your journey, so it's great to have you on the show. But before we dive into all the amazing work and experiences you have in and around the world of legal, we do have a customary icebreaker question here on the Legally Speaking podcast, which is, on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, what would you rate the hit TV series Suits in terms of its reality of the law, if you've seen it?
So I knew you would probably ask this, and I did not prepare. I've still not watched Suits, unfortunately, but it's on my list.
It's on the list, and with that, we'll give a 0 and move swiftly on. So, to begin with, Scott, would you mind telling our listeners a bit about your background and career journey?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the co-founder and CEO here at Spellbook. I actually come from a product and engineering background. My co-founder, Daniel DiMaria, I have two co-founders. Daniel DiMaria is the lawyer on the team. So he had a lot of frustrations from practicing law. And when I started the company, I had a lot of frustrations as a client, and where I was looking. I had this small business. Previously, I had this musical instrument business. And one day I got this legal bill that just took half the cash out of our bank account. So that was sort of a formative experience where myself as an engineer, I was like, oh, there must be a way to provide services a little bit more efficiently to clients, especially to small businesses. Other than that, I was the director of engineering at a network monitoring company, and really just kind of been building all my life. I was always interested in law. I kind of saw law and programming as sort of the same thing in a way. They're both dealing with legal text. And, it's this detail-oriented, especially, I was really interested in contracts and computer programs. You're dealing with logic. If you make one little mistake, it can be really bad and detrimental in either of those domains. And, I really like the nuance of both of those things. But I ended up going the engineering route and now getting to learn more and more about law from our customers every day. And Spellbook has over 2,700 law firms and in-house legal teams on board now. So from very large companies like Nestle all the way down to, solo lawyers use our platform.
Yeah, and I love the product, and I want to dive deeper into Spellbook because I think it's genius what you're doing, and also you're one of the first generative AI co-pilots for lawyers. So you are dedicated to making legal services ultimately more affordable and accessible, and we're strongly believers of the show in terms of tech for good and also reducing that access to justice gap as well. So can you tell us more about Spellbook and a bit about the journey of it?
So as I said, I had my own kind of frustrations early on and was motivated to try to create a way to enable lawyers to get rid of some of the drudgery in their day-to-day so that they could focus more on high-value work. And my co-founder, Daniel, went to law school like many lawyers and then was sort of very disappointed at the reality of what practice actually was as a commercial lawyer. He was spending 10 hours a day in Microsoft Word with like 10 windows open. Until late at night, and that wasn't really what he had envisioned. So, that really inspired me to say, hey, there's got to be a better way. Like many tech companies, the first product we built was actually a templating based product. And just like all the way back to, I think, the 70s, you had like your first 70s, 80s, maybe early 80s, you had your first kind of like template based products for things like contracts and legal documents, document automation. And we built a document automation product called Rally, sold it to around 100 law firms, great law firms, and it did reasonably well. But there's been a lot of doc automation companies, and while lawyers liked that doc automation for certain things, they would always say, you know what, the work I'm doing today is too bespoke for templates. It's too bespoke for document automation, and that would come up again and again. They'd buy our product, they would set it up and put a lot of time and effort into building their precedents and templates. And then oftentimes they would end up saying, you know what, the deal I'm working on, the matter I'm working on, it's just too bespoke. I'm gonna pull up an old Word precedent and just hack on it from there. And we saw that over and over. And then GitHub Copilot came out in 2023, maybe late 2020. Actually, no, sorry, 2022, maybe late 2021. And this was actually the first real popular generative AI application. This was before ChatGPT. And GitHub Copilot was this tool for programmers that would help you write code. And all it was at the time was fancy autocomplete. You'd be writing your code and you could hit tab and it would like write the next 5 lines of code for you. And it was game changing. It was the first AI tool as a programmer I ever used that was like actually useful, because it can work in any situation. It didn't matter what I was working on. I didn't need a template. I didn't need to prepare it. So whatever I was working on, this thing would try to predict, the next 5 lines of code that I needed to write. And I remember my first experience where I was very skeptical, as most people are, of these products. And I remember my first experience where it actually blew me away, and it suggested these 10 lines of code, and I deleted it. I said, that's junk. This is AI garbage. I deleted it. And then probably 20 minutes later, I realized, oh crap, the code I wrote was wrong. I was overlooking a little bit of complexity, and actually what the AI had output was right. And I went back and I said, wow, the AI was smarter than me in that moment. And so that was an aha moment for us at Spellbook. We ended up changing the name of the company and very quickly launching, to our knowledge, it was actually the very first generative AI copilot for lawyers. This was in the summer of 2022, first commercial one, and inspired by GitHub Copilot. We showed it to a number of our customers, and it was just instant. They were instantly falling in love with it in a way that we had never seen, not just in terms of like, oh, they're interested in paying for it, but like what we care about is, do people actually use it on a day-to-day basis? And what we saw when we launched our generative AI product was lawyers were sticking to it. They were using it every day in their workflow, and they were, we were showing it to them on calls, and their pupils were dilating, and no one had seen ChatGPT. ChatGPT didn't exist at that point. So, everyone's mind was just totally blown there. And lawyers were like, oh, wow, like finally, this is going to be a type of technology that's actually really going to impact my day to day, where I think a lot of lawyers were very kind of jaded up to that point where, they had been sold a lot of solutions that didn't really end up changing their day to day the way that they were promised. So, and now we're here, a couple of years later with 2,700 firms and customers on board, and rapidly growing the product. We also had this new AI agent product that we launched a couple months ago, which in our view is like the first full-fledged AI agent that you can assign big, complex document projects to, and it will, chew on them and get you to a result, almost like delegating to a colleague. That's a little bit about Spellbook.
Yeah, and look, it's great. And look, AI agents are absolutely here and there to stay, and they're only going to get better and better and better. And I think that really has an interesting perspective in terms of future work and roles and what those look like, putting my sort of legal recruiting talent hat on. But I want to talk about entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship's hard. Building things is hard. And, Spellbook is a great success story, but could you talk us through that journey of building Spellbook and, what have been some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome and come across?
Yeah, it is ridiculously hard. And I never would have imagined how hard it was before doing it. I think the hardest thing is, what you call product market fit, building a product that people really genuinely like, and that, you're not just kind of shoving down people's throats with good sales. I think
Yeah.
there are lots of companies that are good at sales and they're good at selling products, but people end up just not using the products. Actually building something that people use and that changes their habits is it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Um, and our journey there, it took years until we kind of hit with the Spellbook Gen AI product. With our doc automation product, we launched over 100 different web pages with different messages and angles on that. So literally we had almost like 100 basically failed marketing pages over 100 before we actually arrived at Spellbook. And so we sold, and we tried every 2 weeks, we would take a new angle on what we were doing to see if we could make lawyers' eyes light up a little bit more or get them using the thing a bit more. And it was an excruciating period of time but we learned so much about lawyers through that. And I learned that, like, unfortunately, you can't just listen to customers. You have to listen to your customers, but also we had to watch our customers to really deeply understand them and get in their shoes. And even Daniel, who's a lawyer, it took him a lot of time to really figure things out. And like one of the things we learned is like, lawyers love the idea of using templates and setting up templates. And they would say, yes, I need a templating system. I can't wait to do this. And then we would watch over and over again them fall out of love with templates and to build all these templates and not use them. And we saw that pattern 50 times, close to 100 times of lawyers wanting to do that and then watching, they thought they could use templates and here's why it didn't work. But it took enormous amount of trial and error to get to basic kind of product market fit. And that was a really hard part. Nowadays, it's very different. We're scaling, we've grown almost 5x in revenue over the past 12 months. The challenges are different. The challenges now are more about scaling. We're in this huge opportunity. How do we capture the part of the market that is right for Spellbook and that Spellbook is best for? And so that's a lot about speed and scale and a different set of challenges today, which is actually, I think, a much easier set of challenges.
Yeah, and I always say new level, new devil, right? When you've conquered something else, you're on to the next. And there's so many lessons in that you just shared. There's a big element to what I say when I'm involved in business as well. It's like failing fast. You said there, like test. That's great. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And I always use the acronym LOSE. When you lose, which I believe is life offering some experience. And like you said, you learn a lot from those actual lessons where you can go away, implement. And you also rightly said, don't always listen to the customers. I'm the butcher, the famous Henry Ford quote. He said something along the lines of, if I'd asked my customers what I want, they would have said faster horses, which of course it was actually the automobile that was the breakthrough moment. So sometimes, you've got to think and take a step back. So love a lot of that. And a famous quote that I think Hemant from the chief product officer at Clio said, you've got to fall in love with the problem, not the solution. On product side, you've got to really fall in love with the problem. So a lot of what you're saying there. And I want to kind of then move into an interview you did with the Canadian Lawyer magazine, just to dive a bit deeper, because you explained we call assistive AI. It's all about the kind of giving a lawyer an electric bicycle that helps them go as they're working. Love that, by the way. So when a lawyer actually opens a contract, they're reviewing, how does Spellbook assist them? Give us some sort of practical, tactical stuff. Yeah,
totally. So yeah, the electric bicycle for lawyers is a big part of the insights we had from failing a lot was that, lawyers don't necessarily want to have too many different tools to reach for. They want to do what they do. They love what they do. They're in a habit, and building something for them that is a wind at their back that while they do what they already do is a huge part of our strategy and a huge part of, I think, why Spellbook has been successful so far. And so, how Spellbook works today is it is a Microsoft Word add-in, where lawyers, for better or for worse, it's where they spend a lot of their time. And one of the things we do, we focus on drafting and review of commercial documents and transactional documents. Our contract review is probably our most popular feature, and it can basically give suggestions to any contract you have open on what the risks are, what might be missing, and you can provide a guidance or have a playbook. So if you review a lot of this type of contract, you might have 20 or 30 standard playbook items that you go through. You can actually trigger it to just automatically open and run some of these checks as soon as you open up the contract in Word and open up Spellbook. So it's very much there giving you suggestions as you're working, and then from these suggestions you can directly insert into Word. So if you choose you like a suggestion, and you can say, hey, let's make a fix for this. it will suggest a fix that you can insert into Word with track changes. But the lawyer's always in the driver's seat. So there's no point where it's like modifying the whole contract for you and you have no say. We bubble up suggestions and you decide whether it's a good suggestion or a bad suggestion. And what's really exciting now about what we're doing is personalized suggestions. So we're learning over time that lawyer's style. And this is another thing that we learned through tons of failure, is that lawyers have their own style that they've developed over years of practice with their particular clients, and firms have their own style as well. So we have to learn that. And a lot of these things are very subjective. So, Spellbook can learn your style over time and give the lawyer suggestions that are in line with what they would typically do to make things like contract reviews much faster. We also do drafting. So if you just need to draft a clause, draft a quick memo or email, that's something that we're quite good at. We can do an AI-based kind of red line review that will, summarize for your client, like, okay, what actually changed here that I care about? There's like 100 red lines. What substantively changed? These are all the sorts of tools that we have in the Spellbook toolbox.
Yeah.
And then we have Spellbook Associate, which is a new thing. But
I'm a big fan of the products, and you're solving everyday pain points, and that's the thing. You've really worked hard, and this is what, again, for any aspiring legal tech entrepreneurs or people in the world of getting that product market fit, and then really listening to your customers and getting as client focused and as centered as possible, and then everything you're bringing out is just a real pain relief for these lawyers. So tell us more about that.
Sure. Spellbook Associate is our new agent-based product, and we launched it a couple months ago. In our view, it's the first kind of full-fledged AI agent for law, which means for us 4 things. It's rather than just doing quick tasks or answering chat messages or doing a quick review like our Spellbook add-in product does, it's like a coworker that you can delegate a project. And it can do 4 things. It can plan. So you delegated a project. Say you're doing a financing transaction. You're going to need like 10 different documents to close that transaction, maybe more. You're going to have to take a term sheet and cross-reference all of this different information to get that transaction together. So first, Spellbook Associate has a planning capability. You can give it a big project and it can say, okay, first I'm going to need to look at the term sheet. Then I'm going to need to ask the user what other information I need to know. Then I'm going to go and update this document. Then I'm going to cross-reference it with this document and update this document. So it can deal with these, it can come up with a plan to deal with that. 2, it can actually execute. So if you give it a big set of Word documents and templates, it can open up those documents with Word and start editing them. It's not just like ChatGPT giving you a chat message out. It's actually going and editing Word documents for you. 3, it can check its own work. So the problem with agents, and if you just think about how a human works, a lot of the early agents, they couldn't check their own work. So they would just go off the rails on some crazy path through the woods and you get some wild output and you'd be like, oh, agents don't work. The problem was people didn't have self-checking and self-evaluation implemented. And any human knows, like if you come up with a plan on something that you're doing today, it's going to go off the rails, and that correction is really important. So Spellbook Associate can check its own work. And then 4, it can correct its plan based on checking its own work and correct its course based on what it's seen. And so it can plan, it can execute, it can check its own work, and it can correct its course. And when you combine all of those things together, you get what is basically like an AI colleague where you can assign it very complex projects with sets of multiple documents where it's cross-referencing, jumping around, editing, and you actually get a product back that is maybe similar to what you might get from a junior associate in a law firm.
Yeah, and you just think of that isn't going to get tired, whereas an associate, a junior associate working those hours, and again, thinking it from a people perspective and maybe the modification of what the future of work looks like, that can really remove a lot of that heavy lifting that's required. And I think it's just an absolutely sweet spot product right now, very needed. Let's talk about your journey, Scott, because obviously you're bringing a lot of innovation from a non-legal background like you shared, but how have your 15 years plus, of building technology, you've been a director of engineering, you've been a team lead software developer, project engineer. How have all these different experiences helped what you've brought in terms of developing Spellbook, if at all?
A lot of what I did before Spellbook just didn't work. And so again, it takes a long time to figure out how do you really get product market fit? How do you really get marketing to work? I worked for a number of startups where they did okay, but most startup companies don't do particularly well. They don't get to where they want to go. And so you think a lot about why does that happen? And you learn over time what are those like really nuanced things you need to figure out to make a product work, and what are the really nuanced things you need to figure out to get marketing to work. And product marketing are 80% of what I think about, and how to get them really right. And they go hand in hand. And I think, one of the biggest things I've learned is you've got to make a product that it's such a noisy world today. If your product doesn't cut through and in like basically 1 to 5 seconds blow someone's mind, it's going to be too expensive to acquire customers, and it's going to be too slow going. You're competing with TikTok, you're competing with Netflix, you're competing with Suits, you're all of these other things that people can be doing, that you have to really focus deeply on creating these truly magical experiences. And that's part of our name, Spellbook, and one of our values of Spellbook is find the magic. It's like, if you are building a feature that is not actually like magical, making people's pupils dilate, almost giving them this, like, we call it like a physiological reaction. Like your product and the marketing for that product has to be so magical that people get a neurochemical response to it, where they almost see their life flash before their eyes, and they're like, holy cow, the next 5 years of the rest of my life working is going to be way better. It's going to be different, and I can't wait. And that's the biggest thing I've learned. And unless you hit that bar of that level of magic, I think in this day and age, it's just too noisy a world to cut through and to make people care. And number two thing, so that's number one. Number one is, you got to just keep hammering on the product and marketing until it is absolutely magical and ahead of the game. One of the things we've done again and again is show things to customers that they haven't seen before. So we were early to Gen AI, early to agents. And then number two is habit formation, and slipping into people's workflow is as important as the product itself. People are overwhelmed. They have often too many different apps they're going to. So it's as important to have a good product as to figure out, how do you get your customer to actually change their day-to-day habits? Because it's hard. We're all so busy. Lawyers particularly just have like the most ridiculously busy and chaotic job in the world, especially a lot of transactional lawyers that we deal with. So you really have to think so deeply about how do you not change their habits and slip in like an electric bicycle or like wind at their back, that they just turn this thing on and they're immediately running 10 times faster without really changing their habits. I think that's somewhere where a lot of companies are not doing well. They come up with cool products, but the lawyer has to change their habit way too much to use it, and it sort of doesn't work out.
Today's episode is brought to you by Clio. Are you frustrated with your current legal management software? You're not alone, and thousands of solicitors across the UK feel your pain. However, the hassle of moving all their existing client and case data holds most back from switching, prolonging the frustration. Clio is here to help. Their dedicated migrations team will be with you every step of the way while you transfer your information. And if you have any questions, you'll get award-winning support available 24/5 by live chat, phone, and email. So help is always there when you need it most. It's no wonder Clio consistently receives 5-star ratings for its ease of use and top-notch service. If you're ready to leave the frustration behind, visit clio.com/UK to learn more and see why Clio continues to be the go-to choice for solicitors across the UK. Now back to the show. I talk about this all the time. We're in the attention economy. Like, you need to get people's attention. Like exactly. You say, it's a nanosecond. If you can't get that attention, then you've failed. And, you're actually talking about magic. And my favorite quote I use all the time is, the magic you are looking for is in the work that you're avoiding. And I think it's absolutely true that, if you're not doubling down on that to create that magic and not really getting in behind the scenes to do the work, then you're not going to make the impact that you're looking for. I know that something that's very important to Spellbook and myself and the other organizations I'm involved is in terms of the broader making legal services more accessible. So I really want to give you the chance to talk from your perspective on Spellbook in terms of how does that align with the broader vision of making legal services more affordable and accessible? Yeah,
that's our mission. That's why I'm here. As I mentioned, I had that experience early on of running this small business. I was straight out of college. I didn't have a lot of money. And I got this legal bill that just took half the money out of our bank account. Like, no other accountant or other service provider had ever sent me a bill that I had never seen a bill half that big in my entire life. And now I see it as normal. As a larger business, it does make more sense. because the risk at our size now, we're 70 plus employees, soon we'll be 100. The legal bills actually start to make a lot of sense at this point. But as a small business, it was really difficult to figure out how to pay for those hourly rates because there wasn't that much on the line and the risks weren't as high. And so it's it's what brings people to our company. And there's actually two parts to our mission statement. It's make legal services accessible by helping lawyers get rid of the drudgery in their day-to-day. So lawyers are our customers. Lawyers pay for our product. We only sell to lawyers. There's a lot of drudgery that my co-founder Dan did not want to do, and that he did not see himself doing when he went through law school and picked up all these student loans for law school. Yeah, that's absolutely core to what we do. That's what makes it worth it. Running a company like this is an enormous amount of work. In my opinion, if you want to make money, it is not the right direction to go. It's not worth it for that. Yes, you might make money, but there's easier ways to make money than starting and running a business. Much easier ways, I think. What makes it worth it is the mission for us. That's what motivates us. And the legal system is so important. Making access to legal services really seamless is I think, really, really motivating to us.
Yeah, and mission-focused companies are absolutely the future. Those who have a North Star and stick to it. I was at a Thrive People Summit earlier this year, which is all around the future of work. And there's an alarming statistic that within the next 5 years, over 75% of the workforce will be millennials. They are looking for purpose-led organizations that focus on that human touch, that focus on innovation, focus on collaboration, and all the things that are important to that type of labor skill set. So I think what you're building, absolutely, there are other ways to go out there and make a living. But if you have a real mission or a purpose, there's something that keeps getting you up every day that drives you to want to make sure you can look back and actually have a legacy that's something to be proud of. So let's talk about actually getting people involved with the product, because you offer prospective clients the opportunity to trial Spellbook. So what do they actually get during a trial?
Yeah, super easy to get set up with a trial. Many of our customers, actually, we do this really seamlessly. Many of our customers, you can go to our website, spellbook.legal, sign up for a trial, and you can just book an onboarding, and you'll, within 20 minutes, be set up with a trial, fully trained on the software, and off to the races. And it's a 7-day trial, sometimes extended, depending on the circumstance. If it's a much larger company or in-house counsel team, sometimes that's a much longer evaluation period. But it's very simple to sign up for and to get using. And the vast majority of those who trial Spellbook end up using it long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that through lots of people that from in my legal services use and rave about Spellbook. So I think what you're producing is great. Let's talk about the future of sort of generative AI. It's powered by, I believe, OpenAI's GPTs. So, how do you foresee generative AI changing the legal, ultimately, landscape and legal services moving forward? It's probably quite a big question, but love your thoughts.
Yeah, we're powered by a number of different models. GPT-4 is one, and a number of others as well. It is a huge shift. I don't think law has seen this kind of game-changing technology since maybe email and word processing. That's the last two things that maybe had this kind of impact. I think some of the junior associate drudgery is going to go away for humans. Completely. Especially those early years of just like pure and utter drudgery that a lot of lawyers had to go through, they will disappear. And there will be some resentment maybe from some of the senior lawyers, like, these young lawyers don't have to do what I had to do. But that's just how the world tends to evolve. We're going to have to figure out how to educate younger lawyers if they don't have to go through this sort of drudgery. I think AI is a really good teaching tool. So we are seeing huge uptake of actually Spellbook in law schools today. We've had over 90 or 100 professors sign up to bring Spellbook to their classes. So I think AI is actually a really good teaching tool if you set it up the right way. So I'm optimistic that while lawyers may not learn the way they originally did, that AI can be used as a teaching tool and a learning tool for them. I think, the kind of effective hourly rate will go up basically because you lawyers will be able to do a lot more in less time, and clients will get the same value for less effort. And that's a good, in most of capitalism, and that's a good thing. It's going to be a little bit, I think, challenging in large law firms where they're really tied to the hourly billing model versus, say, value-based billing. But I think you see those large firms adopting regardless. I think for the small and mid-sized firms, we're seeing rapid adoption, a lot more value-based billing. A lot of our customers are coming from these smaller firms who are just, evolving past pure hourly billing and ultimately still getting a really good effective hourly rate. And I think that's what, really matters. I think you're going to see a lot of small firms succeed. One thing we're seeing is like more lawyers going out on their own and acquiring Spellbook, and firms that, being a solo lawyer or a small firm is really difficult because you don't have, if you get a big work is lumpy, and if you get 5 clients asking for something at the same time, you're staying up late, you don't have a lot of support staff. We're seeing these small firms really use AI quickly to get better work-life balance, service more clients, be more efficient, and not to have, say, the same overhead of, the same number of support staff. So I think it's really good for those solo lawyers and small firms. I predict we're going to see a lot more growth in that segment, and more lawyers going it on their own, and building more of these small firms being successful and taking on a wider variety of matters, things that maybe they wouldn't have been able to digest before are now suddenly digestible. And yeah, I think that's really exciting, because I think the small firms are also really good at servicing the small businesses. And that was one of my original frustrations, was getting that support as a small business. And I see small firms servicing small businesses. Everyone's happy, small firms making good money, good margin, the client's happy and they're paying what they want. Really excited about that.
Yeah, and I agree. I think there's going to be a huge shift. And, one of the takeaways I've taken from a lot of the legal conferences this year that's going to enable that, with breakout. And we're seeing here in the UK, there's the likes of Keystone Law. There's going to cut these big dispersed firms where people are either joining or going out by themselves. And, ultimately with automation as well, that can really help. So on top of that, automation was a lot of what was discussed in some of these conferences and how that can really help. So you can be small but mighty. And I think that's going to be super exciting for those that do decide to branch out and be able to, take a lot of work with them and be hugely successful. And I think, I'm pro that. Okay, let's talk about people that might not be quite on the bus yet, Scott. So in terms of, maybe certain legal professionals who are skeptical about, the role of AI in their work, or how can they start engaging with tools like Spellbook and see the benefits? What would you say to the skeptics?
I would say there's a very clear pattern in history of what happens when new technology and game-changing technology comes out. There is a pattern of skepticism that's happened with email, with word processing, with computers, with the internet, with document automation, and the skeptics have almost always ended up, kind of being left behind in the dust eventually. So, I mean, if it is a low probability that AI is suddenly going to be, it's just hype and not there. We see people actually using it on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis constantly to provide clients value. And I just think if you were betting that, AI is not for law, you're betting that you're betting against history basically, and the pattern that has generally happened with the adoption of technology. And you're betting against the 2,700 customers that we see using this stuff on a daily and weekly basis very, very consistently. So I think it's real. It's very real. It may not be all the way there yet everywhere. I think there's a lot of improvement to be made. But you always got to think about this trajectory and skate where the puck is going. That's one of our other values at Spellbook, is like, there's no point in skating where the puck is. You got to think about where the puck is going. Our team, and we're only one company in this space, our team is improving this stuff on a weekly basis. We push out updates every single week. We're going to have 52 updates over the next 12 months. And so if you have an experience that's not quite where you want it to be, or you see some kind of flaw, just consider there's going to be 52 more updates over the next year. And then there's going to be 52 more updates the year after that. And the foundation models underlying GPT-4, GPT-5 is going to come out. Like a lot of the issues and uncertainty, like even hallucinations, this stuff is really rapidly improving. So betting against that tidal wave, I think, is probably not a good bet.
I'd say it's a very, very high risk strategy betting against that.
Yeah.
And, we've had Piers Linney, who's been on Shark Tank's the equivalent over here in the UK, come on the show, good buddy of mine. And he talks about the ship has left the harbour. And so you won't ever be able to catch up with that ship because it's already left, but you can get as close to it. You can get working to keep close to it, or else you can stand on the shore and be just assured that you'll probably be one of the only few left there and obsolete. That is the velocity of this. And AI of today is going to be exponentially better the next day. And like you said, 52 updates, like those updates are exponentially better, not just a little bit better. Everything that's happening at the speed of change is really improving and solving real world problems and shaping our futures. And, I heard a quote the other day, AI isn't a once in a revolution opportunity, it's a once in a species opportunity. And that's a really big statement, but I believe it. You actually look at, what my young children or maybe the lives they lead will be very, very different to any generations, their great parents and et cetera, et cetera. And I think you just have to be curious. You have to be learning. And I guess that leads nicely to, before we wrap up, advice for next generation of lawyers. What would you give to those that are interested in pursuing a career in law, but also maybe specifically legal technology and legal services, which perhaps might be a little bit more your bag?
Yeah, sure. So, first, just to touch on what we were talking about and about, the ship moving so fast, I think one saying we have in our company, and I think something for lawyers to think about too, that's actually quite intuitive is we say it's time to chop trees with the blunt axe. And where this comes from, this Abe Lincoln quote, he's like, if I had 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend four hours sharpening the axe. And this has been the history of knowledge work. The history of knowledge work has been sharpening and mastering our tools. And if you think back to the axe, there was 8,000 years between the axe and the chainsaw. So if you sharpened your axe, you mastered your axe, you had the best axe, you got paid dividends for that mastery for thousands of years, many multiples of your human lifetime. The challenge that's happening right now is tech is changing so fast and this upward trajectory is happening so fast that there's actually not time to master anything before the next thing comes out. And this is true for us as developers. This is true for people using our software. But we might have 50% mastered GPT-3 and then GPT-4 comes out and then, the O1 model comes out. And so I think there's this unique, unintuitive thing that whether you're a lawyer or a technologist, you have to be really comfortable picking up tools that you haven't mastered yet, because by the time the chain, you might pick up the axe today and then the chainsaw is coming up tomorrow. You can't just sit on the sidelines and say, well, I'm not gonna pick up anything until I've mastered it, because you're going to be waiting around a decade until that time comes. So this is what I tell to our team. This is what we tell to our customers. Like, you just got to pick up, and you might be a little unfamiliar. You might not feel like you've mastered these tools, but if you're waiting for things to stabilize, you're going to be waiting, I don't know, maybe for the rest of your life for that moment. So you might as well kind of dive in. So that's my advice to lawyers, and that's how we think of it at our team, with our team as well. In terms of lawyers getting into legal tech, I think there's a massive opportunity. We're really interested in hiring more lawyers onto our team. It is really hard for people outside of law to get the insight of what it's really like to be a lawyer, and that is really valuable. We see lawyers performing really well amazingly well on our sales team, because they're just so good at that. I mean, they don't have to fake anything. They know exactly what the pains of the customer is. They face it themselves, and they can speak to it really authentically. So I think sales and marketing are great paths for lawyers to go who want to get into legal tech. I think product is also interesting as well. We have a set of lawyer advisors that, help us understand how our product helps lawyers in different practice areas. And that's another, really promising route as well. I think there's a lot of opportunity for motivated lawyers who want to get into legal tech.
Yeah, and it's a very, very exciting time. And I love that. And I think just one of the things I would close on in terms of a trend is, it's the Clio 2024 Legal Trends Report, which is quite interesting. You may find interesting that, cloud adoption basically took years and years, nearly 10, 15 years for law firms to move away from bricks and mortar, where actually, I think from 2023 to 2024, the statistics from AI adoption was something like the low 20% to now nearly up to 79%. So actually, a lot of legal people and people within the legal profession are seriously getting curious about this and diving in. So there really is no better time to start getting around and actually testing products like Spellbook, checking if it's right for you, getting yourself out there, getting to conferences, learning from great people in around there, because that trend is only going to continue going like that. Scott, this has been an absolute masterclass. Really enjoyed learning about your journey, the great things you've been doing at Spellbook. If our listeners want to learn more about your career or indeed Spellbook, where can they go to find out more? Feel free to share any websites, any social media handles. We'll also share them with this episode for you too.
Yeah, sure. So you can learn more about Spellbook at spellbook.legal. That's our website. Yeah, there's all sorts of information on there. You can sign up and try the trial very quickly if you're interested. And yeah, we're very active on social as well. You can follow me on LinkedIn, for instance.
Yeah, absolutely. I would encourage folks to do so. Scott's a great thought leader and building something magical with his team over at Spellbook. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. From all of us on the Legally Speaking podcast, sponsored by Clear, wishing you lots of success. But for now, from all of us, over and out. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.